Okay, this is the recordproduction.com interview, and today we're at Sticky Studios with Jake Gosling.
Hey.
How you doing?
Alright, yeah, not too bad.
Jolly
Not
good,
too bad.
jolly good. This is lovely here, isn't it? It's all
It's not
cosy.
bad. Yeah, it's cosy.
Well hidden.
Yes, yeah, well hidden. We're sort of far away from the road, which is down there, so...
So tell us a bit about how you got into the music biz, because you've done a few other music busy things, haven't you, before becoming a producer?
Yeah, I mean, I was mainly sort of bands and stuff like that.
And did you learn an instrument as a child?
Yeah, I mean, I was piano, keys, and stuff, and I was a singer in a band.
Did you have proper piano lessons?
I did, yeah. I wasn't particularly good at them. I was sort of, how it started, I had one teacher that used to hit me on the head with a pencil, which wasn't ideal to try and keep me in time.
Like
yeah, just like, stay in time. So yeah, it wasn't great, to be honest with you.
Was your parents driving you towards that? Did you have a musical
Yeah,
upbringing?
I mean, my dad's a musician, so
Yeah.
he was, he was really influential in that sort of side of stuff. And yeah, he was in bands and stuff like that. He was involved with like Fleetwood Mac.
Oh really?
And stuff like that. Yeah. And so when I was a kid, people from Fleetwood Mac or Eric Clapton, different people would be sort of like, so that to sort of be surrounded with that was quite incredible, and it must have rubbed off.
Yeah, presumably it seemed quite normal at the time.
It sort of did, which is weird to say, but yeah, it sort of did, and I think that sort of being surrounded with that whole scene, which was some great songwriting and like crazy proper sort of rock and roll people and that sort of thing, but lovely people, but really creative, and I think that side of it really excited me.
And presumably that's helped you feel comfortable around musicians and people you're working with.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think people are people at the end of the day, aren't they? And I think it's very easy to sort of put people on pedestals and think they're this and that, when really they're just normal people like everyone else. And it does definitely help, because you're not sort of necessarily starstruck by things. You're like, you're just you, and that's what it is. So yeah, it's nice.
There must be some people you're starstruck with, though, aren't there?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's not. I can't really think of anyone. I mean, I think if it was someone like Joni Mitchell or something, I think I'd probably have a meltdown. Start grabbing her ankles and sort of, crying. But yeah, I mean, there, or Bob Dylan or someone like that. So I think it's probably like, when I was younger, my parents were listening to that sort of stuff, and those would be heroes of mine that I probably would be completely starstruck by.
Right.
But newer artists, is a bit different maybe.
Yeah. So you were in bands.
So I was in bands. I was doing that, and then I went up to uni. I was up at Salford University. I wasn't doing music actually. I was in. I went up to Manchester because Oasis were doing all their sort of stuff, and bands were really happening up. There was a great music scene in Manchester. I did a course in media. My parents were like, look, if you're not gonna, study music, then try something else in case music doesn't work out, because for a lot of people it doesn't, and it is incredibly difficult to try and sort of succeed in it. So I did that as a sideline, but it was really useful actually, because media and music are so related, and especially now with the internet and all that sort of stuff. I learned a lot about like propaganda and stuff like that, how you can relate, like how music, I guess you can relate it to music in the way that if you talk so much about something, like with I know it sounds a bit weird, but like with the war, they'd be like, the war's great, and and like, go and fight for England and all that sort of stuff. Really extreme, but then in music and Facebook and Twitter and that sort of stuff, it's actually a similar thing in a different way, where people are promoting what they're doing, and they're really sort of exploiting, I guess, what they're up to and selling it in a way. Which is part of getting the music out there. So that side of it was really interesting. So I did the uni thing, just about got through, but had a great time. In fact, Peter Kay, the comedian, he was in the same year as me.
All right.
So he was doing stand-up comedy, and I was doing music and bands. So it's quite a cool little combination. He's a really funny bloke.
I bet,
a real character. So that was fun times. And then I did some work experience at Virgin Records.
Right. So you headed back towards the music biz.
So yeah, so I did a bit of work experience, which was again really good. That was in marketing.
Right.
I've been making press packs and stuff like that. And then went back to uni, still doing more bands. Got quite close to sort of deals and things, but then a band member would leave, and the usual situation. And gigged a lot. Did some stuff in Ireland.
So this was a keyboard player.
Yeah, mainly as a singer actually.
Right.
And I played the accordion as well in another band. That was like a folk rock band. And yeah, so different elements really. And then what was it? I went and got an interview to go to, it was Hart PR, a girl called Jo Hart, who now has quite a sort of successful PR company in London.
Right.
And I went for the interview and I got the job there. So I was a record plugger.
Right.
Which was quite weird, but I would literally had no experience really. I mean, I'd been in music and I love music and stuff, but it was a completely different side to what I'd done before. And to be honest with you, I didn't like it at all. I was pretty rubbish. I love Jo to pieces, but I think she was pulling her hair out half the time. And I remember getting a phone at the band called NSYNC, which Justin Timberlake, his old band. And I was sort of phoning up radio stations, and I got a phone call from Dragon FM in Wales to say, look, we can't do the interview. I think they were somewhere else in the country. Jo was with them, my boss, and I was supposed to pass on the message to say, oh, by the way, they can't do the interview in Wales. And of course I forgot. My job didn't last too long there. I suddenly got
so they had a wasted journey to Wales.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, they got to Wales and they went.
Justin Timberlake's never spoken to you since.
Yeah, well, this is it. I haven't brought it up with him. No. So that was that basically.
Right.
And then after then that for me was a real turning point. I remember actually being really upset about it. I was driving down the Westway in London, and it was sort of early in the morning because I got in the bus, I got fired, and it was felt like a real change. And I remember never telling my parents, in fact, don't show them this interview. They won't be happy. But yeah, and then I was like, right, well, I'm really gonna go for, because I love writing songs. That's where I was from. Yeah. I love producing. I fell into producing sort of accidentally through producing bands I was in.
Right.
Yeah. Just getting an 8-track and experimenting and that sort of stuff. So I sort of learned just myself really. I didn't go to a technical school or. So a different approach compared to the old school producers, where a lot of it was a lot more technical. I'm not actually that technical. I'm more creative maybe than I am technical.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's just a different approach. Yeah. And that was it really. And then I started sort of working and looking for other artists really.
Right. So did you sort of set up on a commercial basis? When did this place come about?
I started doing after that point. I had a mate who was in a band on a TV show, on a kids show.
Right.
And through him, I met a girl called Sarah Liversidge, who's actually now my publisher.
Mm-hmm.
And I went in to have a meeting with her, quite hungover, and she was actually quite hungover, which was ideal. And we sort of clicked, which was great. Right. And I said, well, I write music and stuff. She said, well, do you want to pitch for this or maybe try for that?
Oh, right.
So I started in TV music.
Right.
After then I started to do that, and to make money from music, as we all know, is incredibly difficult. So that was my first sort of starting to make money.
Brought a few quid in, presumably.
Yeah, not crazy amounts, but enough for me to live.
Yeah.
And I was signing on. And I was juggling everything to try and make it happen.
Yeah.
And that's the way I guess it sort of started.
Right.
But I always had that love of live music and bands and writing.
So how did you manage to set this place up then?
This place came about through sort of accidentally, really. I mean, I hire this place. So I had a mate of a mate who got involved, and I found out about it, and rented it basically.
Yeah.
And built it up over time. The new building on the side is one of something that I sort of did, and I'm now converting the stables up there into little studios as well.
Right.
I mean, it's not a fancy place, and it's not got maybe all the you expect from a lot of big studios, but I think what it does is it has that sort of charm and. A few mice running around here and there, but I think because it's open and it's quiet, and I just bits of kit. I mean, some of them from my dad.
Right.
The Rhodes came from him.
Oh right.
That was an amazing hand-me-down.
Yeah.
The Jupiter 8 as well. It's one of my favourite keyboards up there.
That's pretty. Has it got MIDI on that one?
It has got MIDI on it.
That's handy, isn't it?
Yeah. I still need to do a bit of refurbing on some of them. Some of the keys have gone on that and stuff. Yeah. But as they do with old kit. But I mean, and I'd also just collect stuff. There's an organ out there I got from a Scout Hut in.
Yeah, I've got one like that. That's
yeah.
Mine was £10.
Yeah, I think mine was around the same. But you know, it's funny what you find, don't you? I mean,
Yeah.
and part of it is that you know, eBay now and stuff like that. You can get amazing stuff.
Well, I was sort of amazed. It sort of looks quite spartan in here. Compared, you know, I was expecting you to have piles of stuff. Have you got a sort of secret cupboard?
I've got lots of bits and pieces, but you know, like anything else, a lot of it would be just cluttering around, and I wouldn't be using as much as I do. You know, with technology, it does change a lot of things. I mean, I use the live piano in there a lot. And I just still use I use everything that's here.
So is that upright piano in there? Is that the one that's on the Paloma Faith single?
That isn't actually. No, we did that at another studio. We did that at Gary Barlow's studio.
Okay, so it's his upright piano.
It's his grand piano, whatever his grand piano. But yeah, we did that up there because I worked with Nelly Hooper on the album, and that used to be his studio. And I'd worked there before, and he obviously knew it really well. And Paloma lives like 10 minutes away from there, so it just made sense to do it there.
Yeah.
I did a couple of tracks here, but not that one.
Right. Because there's an upright piano. Is it Picking Up the Pieces that was the single?
Picking Up the Pieces, yeah. Just Be. That's just her and piano. And I remember a funny story with that one because originally it was like it was quite a fiddly thing to do, and we tried different keyboard players and stuff, and I had this really stupid idea to go, why don't we just MIDI it? Because it was a MIDI piano.
Right, I see.
So and it just had about as much feel as a donkey. It was absolutely awful. Like, forget that idea. But yeah, it's amazing how you try stuff out.
So how does it work with Nelly Hooper then? Because he's been around a bit and done a few things. And why did you come together with him? And how did that happen? And
I came together with him through a mutual friend of mine called John Wolfe, who manages Wiley. He's a rapper, and he managed another artist who was like an acoustic singer guy. And I was working with him early on, and then John got the gig to work and manage Wiley. And I started working with Wiley. And Wiley needed some studio time, and then he knew Nelly. And then he spoke to Nelly and said, "Oh, I want some studio time." And I was doing the sessions for Wiley, but I was doing them in Nelly's studio.
Oh, right.
Sense.
It's very complicated.
It's a long one there. But,
so why did
and that's how I met Nelly.
Right, and so he got you in to sort of co-produce the Paloma album.
Yeah, well, how it worked, I mean, I'd just done Ed's album, and I was doing a lot of work with Nelly. I'd done an album with a girl called Emily Osment in America with Nelly on that.
Oh, right.
And I was doing a lot of work.
What were you doing? Were you sort of programming?
I was doing all the programming, you know, structuring and working with Nelly on everything, but I was doing a lot of it. So I sort of, at that point, especially in my career and stuff, and Nelly was cool with it. He was like, "Look, you're bringing a lot to the table here, so we should co-produce this one." And I was like, "Damn right, Nelly." so yeah.
So was he kind of more executive, sort of overseeing kind of?
Yeah, I mean, he's brilliant. He's great with ideas. He's got. He's very good with vocals as well.
Right.
In
what way? What does he do?
Well, I think he's just got a real understanding of vocals. I mean, likewise I do, because I used to be a singer, so that really helps. But I think in just terms of his performance and his character, you know, with production, it's more than just getting the right frequency or whatever it is. It's about the performance and getting the most out of that artist. And we're very similar like that, and I think that's why we work really well together, because we're both sort of on that level where, you know, with Paloma it wouldn't just be necessarily getting the right mic, it would be about dressing the room, making sure the room looked good, making sure the atmosphere was right. We'd have little sparkly lights on there and incense burning or whatever it might be to try and make that atmosphere and get the best out of the artist.
Yeah.
So Nelly's great like that, and he's a very creative person. And that's part of it.
So when you're doing vocals with Paloma, will you both be in the control room and she'll be out in the studio?
Yeah.
Anybody? Did you have an engineer, or were
we had an engineer as well?
Right,
a guy called Dave, who was doing the comping and the sort of that side of it. So it was nice for me on that we had someone else as well, because normally I would be doing everything. I mean, when it's just me.
So there's three of you in the room too. I sort of wonder what there is for you to do.
Well, no, I mean, it's amazing because it's like, it was quite funny. We'd have like votes, because there'd be three, it'd be like me, Paloma, and Nelly, and we'd be like, "Would we like that line?" And the two of us, yeah, the other one, no, or whatever.
So would you do a few full takes and then you'd all sit together and comp them?
With Paloma, it would be like that. Yeah, we try and get as much of the same vocal as in one thing as possible.
Right.
I mean, I personally don't really like comping at all.
No.
I much prefer to get the performance. With Ed, it would be completely different. With Ed Sheeran, it would be like, let's just go for that. It wouldn't be necessarily. I don't do any comping with Ed at all.
Right.
But with Paloma, it's just everyone works differently, and some artists like to work differently as well. But yeah.
If you're going to do with Paloma or anybody else, if you're going to do double tracked vocals, is that something you'll get them to go back out once you've compiled the take? And
yeah. Again, each artist is different. I mean, I tend
some double track isn't on the Nina Nesbitt, or certainly some backing vocals and things going on.
Yeah.
Is that something you do the same day as you've done the?
Yeah, I mean, I work really fast. I mean, with Nina stuff, it's really quick. I mean, because obviously, like anything, when you do it every day, and especially with technology, and when you know what you're doing, and you've done a lot of experimenting, I think that's the other thing as well, is to keep experimenting as well. It's important to not forget that. Because it can be quite easy just to get lax or loose with it and go, okay, well, this is what I do, and then it just becomes almost mundane. So it's important to almost take a step back from that and go, actually, let's try this or let's try that, you know. But with the vocal thing with Nina, yeah, it's pretty loose. I mean, I do keep it quite rough and ready, but I started on analog tape, so it was very much like that. It wasn't. That's why I maybe don't like comping as much, because then it starts to become mechanical and less organic, I guess. Whereas then, okay, it's there to record it, but how far do you go into the vocal? How far do you spend? Oh, don't worry about it, I'll sort it out later. And I think when that happens, you can sometimes overwork something and take the life out of it. I mean, with Jessie J, for example, I mean, when I prefer her stuff when it's her on YouTube singing a track or even live. I think some of the productions are just too processed, and then sort of, for me, takes the life out of it a bit. When I think it could almost be even bigger. But it depends on what it's for, doesn't it? Really.
Yeah.
You know.
When you're working with somebody like Nina, somebody else mixed those tracks, didn't they? Generally.
Yeah.
Do you know that's going to happen when you're doing them, or do you sort of?
No, I mean, Rory did a lot of work on the Ed stuff. Ed Sheeran. So I've worked. I mean, I have never met Rory. We've worked together for 3 years, but something 2 years. Not long, but you know, I've spoken to him on the phone, and he was in LA at one point, and I was at the same time. We kept on trying to meet up, and that didn't happen. And anyway, I just love the way he mixes. And he really understands as a producer. It's really important to have someone that who can bring out what you hear as well. Because the modern day of production is you're mixing at the same time.
Well, yeah.
You know, with One Direction, I mixed the stuff.
Yeah. Was that just done here?
Yeah, I just do it on the computer. With the A Team, with Ed Sheeran, I mixed it on Cubase on 3 on here.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't. It depends on what it's for. But yeah, Rory's a great mixer, and he brings out those elements that I want to hear as well. And like I say, that's really important. That it follows through and you have the same communication level. So
do you know when you're producing something that you're doing it, do you know that somebody else is going to end up mixing it? And
well, I work alongside the artist if they've got preferences as well, or the label, or even maybe management.
It's kind of different these days, isn't it? I mean, a lot of stuff, especially in pop, gets mixed by dedicated people who just mix, people like Chenzo or somebody who all they do is mix stuff. Whereas in the old days, it was more sort of a producer would be offended if somebody else had got the job of mixing something, you know.
Yeah, I can understand that, and I think to a point sometimes it can be offensive. But you know, I think it's also important to keep open and honest about it, because sometimes someone can bring another element to it that, you know. I mean, my attitude is I want it to be best. I'm not so precious about it. I think it's very easy to get swallowed up and go, this is me, and this is the best thing ever, when sometimes you go, let me just let it go over there a bit, let me have a bit of space from it, and then you can almost produce it from afar and overlook it and go, okay, well, I really like what you've done there, but that's not quite right. No, that doesn't work. Yes, that works. Wow, that sounds great. And I think when you've got that, you've suddenly got another pair of ears, you've got another whole thing on it, and it can actually take it up to another level as well. So
people like Rory and Simon Gogli will they'll run it back past you, will they?
Yeah, all the time, And obviously, the more that they work with you, they also get to understand the way you work, and they know what you like, and you build that relationship up.
So it's not like something that's imposed on you by the record label necessarily. Then
it's more no. I mean, with Paloma, it was very much left up to us. I mean, Nelly was the main forefront of that.
Yeah.
And he'd worked with loads. Simon worked loads with Nelly on stuff anyway, so they had that relationship and that synergy.
Yeah.
So I was bolt on to that. And yeah, I mean, it can work or it can't work. But, obviously, Paloma's done very well. The album's done really well, and it's connected, and that's what you want as a producer. You want it to.
So you'll send your mixer a rough mix, will you, that you think is pretty close?
Yeah.
That's the best you think you can.
Yeah.
I mean, presumably, if you know they're going to mix it, you don't spend days.
Well, I think we do. I mean, I really try and get it to sound as good as it can possibly be.
Right.
And sometimes there have been mixes that I've done that have bettered what the mixer's done.
Yeah.
And it has been used. Likewise, sometimes I will try and get it as close as I could possibly get it.
And presumably, when you're doing that mix, you're putting loads of plugins on and effects and things.
Yeah, I mean,
do you send them the plug-in versions of your things? Or
I send them both. So I send them the finished, how I've done it, the sort of processed vocal of how it's compressed or whatever, EQs and reverbs, and then I'll also send them the dry stem.
Yeah.
So they got the choice or the option. Sometimes they're like, oh yeah, we love the way the vocal sounds there, and sometimes we want to change it up. So.
Yeah. Jolly good.
Yeah.
So you still do a lot of writing with artists you work with, presumably then.
Mm-hmm.
And how does that work? Is it mostly they've done the lyrics, or they've got a lyrical idea and they'll come in, or what's the process?
The process again varies a lot. Majority, how I always tend to work is it will be start from scratch. There will be silent room with nothing on the screen.
No.
Which I quite like, and then which I love in fact, because then you're creating something. You start, and I love that. You start with nothing at the beginning of the day, and then by the end of the day, you've then written a track.
Yeah.
And the process could be different in all sorts of different ways.
Yeah.
I much prefer it when the artist has a very clear idea about what their direction is, what they're trying to say, what they're trying to communicate. The more they know from an artist, I think it makes A, a better artist, and B, better songs. Because you're working with someone who is an artist. I mean, that's what it's about. Rather than someone who's almost like a puppet who doesn't really have anything to say or talk about and doesn't mean anything, and you're like, well, why are we here?
Okay. So they come in and say, right, we want a sort of pretty straightforward pop thing that's going this kind of. What do you reach for in the computer when they go?
Well, then
what do you go?
Well, I'll start looking straight away. I'll start getting Ableton up. I work with Ableton.
Okay.
And I sync that in with Cubase, and I love that as a platform because it's great for manipulating drums and samples and stuff like that. And
have you got a big collection of loops that you'll go through?
Loads of loops, loads of samples, loads of individual. I tend to work more on individual hits than I do necessarily a sample.
And you program?
And I'll program each
on the
kick,
grid,
snare, whatever it might be. And I've collected loads of vinyl, so I've been through the vinyl and I've taken little kicks and snares and hats and things that are little breaks and. Over time, collated all that sort of stuff, and from
that's a lot of work to do, isn't it?
It is a lot of
fun
work.
time to do that.
Well, no, it's just over time. When I haven't been busy, when I had no money, and I was like, just sit here and make kicks. What else can I do? So there's that, and then and swapping with other producers and stuff, and go, oh, I love that. What's that? And can I borrow that? And you can have that, and you share them out.
Trading,
trade samples and sounds and stuff. That's sort of how I'll start on the groove.
The basis of it.
Yeah, Ableton's sort of the basis of it, because it's like I say, it's really quick and easy to manipulate those sounds. And the great thing about it is mistakes as well. You can throw things into it. You can throw in sounds and other things, and it can bend and twist and tune and stretch, and you fall on things that you maybe wouldn't do if you just did it. You know what I mean?
So do you find yourself sort of sampling bits of keyboards and things and then looping them?
Lots of stuff like that. Yeah, I've done lots of stuff like that. I mean, it's there's lots of different elements to sound, aren't there? And I think when you've got things that you stumble across and suddenly appear in a mix. You'll hear something, you might not know what it is. More so in Paloma than any other artists I've worked with. There's lots of stuff that's going on there that that you can't hear or you
picking
can't
up the pieces is a bit of a kitchen sink job, isn't it?
There's all sorts of stuff going on. I mean, there's the choir, there's strings, there's samples, there's drums.
There's real strings on that, isn't there?
Real strings on that.
Where did you do those?
We did them at Air.
Right.
Oh no, we didn't. We did them at Psalm.
Okay.
I'm thinking of someone else. Yeah, we did them at Psalm.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Jolly good.
It was fun.
So did you have somebody engineering the string session with you?
Yeah, we did. We did.
And who did the string arrangement then? Was that somebody?
Oh God.
Did you get somebody in to write that?
I can't remember now.
Doesn't matter. It wasn't you though.
It wasn't me. Well, no, in fact, it was a bit. I mean, with some stuff, because you're writing the parts, then they'll take what you've done and they'll
make it work for string
they'll
players.
score it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is you're playing what you sort of want to hear anyway, and the arranger, I think if they're a good arranger, won't take it too far. There's nothing worse than you give it to a arranger and they suddenly come back with some bizarre thing that you're like, that doesn't work at all. Yeah. Whereas I hadn't had that yet actually, but thankfully.
But you give them a keyboard part.
Yeah, I'd give them the MIDI of what the string will be, the parts, how you play it as the chords, and then.
So you read and write music, do you? And a bit
not really. No. I mean, I'm dyslexic, so I always had a real problem with numbers and stuff. I mean, I do read actually a little bit.
Yeah.
I got to grade 5. Yeah. But I couldn't pass my grade 5 theory. Whoops.
It gets tricky then, doesn't it?
It starts to get a bit hardcore at that point.
And do you work with a guitarist? Is it Chris Leonard? Do you
I
work with him quite a lot?
He's just turned up actually. I work with Chris a lot.
Yeah. I noticed he's sort of co-written a few things. I mean, so on Nina Nesbitt, is that him playing all the guitars mostly, or does she?
On Ian Archer's playing quite a lot. The Stay Out single, which is out at the moment.
It's great. I bought that last night.
Oh, thank you. Cheers, mate.
Number 2 in the iTunes chart.
I know, I couldn't believe it.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Last night.
It sounds amazing. It sounds great.
Yeah, no, I'm really pleased with it. I mean, Ian Archer wrote the song with Nina on that one.
Right.
Great track.
So hard to find credits these days, isn't it?
Yeah, well, this is the other thing. Yeah, I mean, it can't be that hard, and I'm part of the MPG, and we're trying to sort of increase that and awareness for engineers and producers and all those guys to get more. Because it was great. I used to love looking at an album sleeve and going, "Who did that?"
I now actually have to come to the producer's studio and ask them
and say, "Yeah, I know." It's a shame, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a shame.
So he played a lot on Nina stuff.
He played a lot on Nina stuff, and Chris as well.
Does Nina do any, or is
Nina does as well?
Right.
I mean, it's. Nina's not the greatest guitar player in the world, bless her. But what she brings to it doesn't necessarily need the best guitar player in the world. I mean, it depends what you're trying to bring to the track. And she'll have a certain style, and she'll be able to play something that, Chris is an incredible guitar player, can play anything with his eyes closed, behind his back, with his teeth, whatever it might be.
I mean, they sound.
But maybe he can't do something as simple as that, because it's a different feel. I mean, it's whatever it might be. So there are different elements that I'll use in the track for different things. And then Ian Archer has his own style as well, which is great, and it really works well with Nina. It's quite sort of, it's really up front and really in your face and quite pushed, and gives it a nice sort of element to it.
Yeah, I mean, they sound spot on, the guitars on that, don't they? They're really...
Yeah, it really works. Works, yeah.
I was going to ask you, there was one... On Just Before Goodbye, there's a sort of there's an acoustic guitar, which has got a really stereo-y effect on that. Is that something you did, or is that something that was in the mixing? Or?
No, that's something I did. I mixed that one actually.
Did you? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So that was.
So what was the stereo effect on that acoustic guitar?
That was basically just how I tend to do the acoustics. I quite like to be quite wide.
Yeah. And did you record it in stereo?
So I recorded stereo.
Oh, okay.
So I've just got one mic on the hole.
Yeah.
Is that a professional term?
Yeah.
I guess it is. And the neck.
Right.
Around the sort of 9th fret, something like that. And then,
so that's your basic stereo.
That's basically it, really.
So when you did One Direction, do you get in session singers to help with backing vocals?
I did on... I only did on one track.
Did you do the whole album?
Things. No, I didn't do the whole album. I did a track called Little Things, which was a single. I did a track called Over Again, a track called Moments, and a track called Autopilot on 2 different albums.
Right.
But yeah, I've only got a session singer on. In fact, he's not really a session singer, which is even funnier. He's my studio manager.
Right.
And Tommy C. Basically, we ran out of time to get the boys back in the studio, and I was panicking because I wanted to get the last chorus to sound fuller. And Tommy's really good at impressions. He's like these guys that can do an impression of anyone. He's quite good at stuff like that. And he was like, right, I can do an impression of Niall. So he was like, whatever. And I was like, I tell you what, do you mind doing Niall on this one? Can you pretend to be Harry on that? Can you try and do Louis on this one? But I only did it because I'd run out of time to get the boys back in.
I see. So they can
otherwise
they can hack it.
They can do it. Yeah, they can do it. I mean, they're on tour at the moment. They're obviously getting better and better and improving all the time.
Yeah.
But literally, I just let them get on with it and said, look, I didn't waste many time or tuning or comping. Really, just tried to get the best performance out.
Yeah. Because I remember, I did some pop sessions years ago, and very often there'd be a session singer brought in to sort of thicken up the. There was this guy, Lance Ellington.
Right.
So, he'd come in and thicken it all up with a bit of professional sounding sparkle.
Sparkle at the back. Yeah, I don't really do that, to be honest with you.
No, I mean, I guess a band like One Direction, they're a bit more. They've passed the audition, haven't they? They've done
the audition, and they can sing.
Vocals are clearly, an important part.
Very important part.
Would you say that's the most important thing? Is getting the vocals right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, the vocals are the point of where the communication happens the most. Because you've got to make sure that it. Working with Nina's quite interesting because she's Scottish, so it's getting that balance.
You need a translator then.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's getting that balance between her, communicating it because she's Scottish, and she can, but she's not like really broad, hard Glaswegian. She's more Edinburgh, so it's a bit softer. But there are some words where like, what did you say? You have to go back and make sure that it's coming out and it's making sense. But at the same time, there's still that charm of, it's her. Why change that? Why you don't want to take it away from like that sort of thing. So vocals are key. I mean, one of the most important thing. And obviously mix-wise, keeping them.
They're pretty loud on her record, aren't they?
They are loud. Yeah, we keep them quite loud in Paloma as well.
Yeah.
I mean, they're hugely loud.
Yeah.
I mean, the mix level compared to vocals and everything else is ridiculous.
Well,
my dad always said to me, keep the vocals loud, keep them up front.
Yeah.
It
works, doesn't it?
I've always sort of done that.
So we interviewed Mike Peeler, who recently, who did all the Sade records.
Yeah.
And he's been at it a while.
Yeah.
And he said, records these days are very often you hear the vocals, you hear the drums, and there's this kind of wash of stuff going on. He's sort of right in a way, isn't he?
He is right. He is right. I mean, it's a weird one. I mean, I don't know why that is. I guess it just seems to work. It's a trend. Yeah, it's a trend again.
I think he was implying it's partly the technology that makes it like that as well, because you kind of just cook up all these sounds and things rather than when you had a bunch of musicians.
Sure. You'd be a lot more choice with because you wouldn't have all these bolt-ons and plugins and sounds and things. Yeah. You've got so much choice now, haven't you? But I mean, I tend to strip it back as far as I can. With Paloma, it's slightly different because I was working with Nelly, so we've got another producer as well. So it's his influences, my influences. What Paloma wants.
That's quite motivating if you've got somebody like Nelly in the room as well. You kind of think you have to up your game a bit, don't you? You kind of feel like, and I'm sure he feels the same if he's got you in the room.
It's a healthy.
You've got to impress each other a bit.
Yeah, completely. I mean, this is it. I was like the new kid on the block, and he's the established professional who's sold millions and millions of albums. So you've got that healthy, and you're learning. And I want to learn. You want to keep learning. For someone like I was a massive fan of Nelly's. Of what he did. Musically, creatively, and also for him, I guess, in a way to sort of see what I was doing, what I was bringing through. When I introduced him to Ed, he was like, "Who's this guy? He's like so confident, and what's going on?" And played him a couple of stuff, and he's trying to get his head around what it is, because it's a different thing again.
Yeah.
But that's it's cyclic.
Cyclic. So, because you said you played the accordion in one band, and you were working with Wiley, which is a rather different style of music, isn't it?
Yeah, really different.
Presumably you have pretty broad tastes.
Yeah, really broad, and I think that's part of it. I mean, I really do, and I think a lot of people do tend to have quite a broad taste of music, really.
I think it's more.
I think when you're younger, I mean, even when I was younger, I mean, a lot of my mates were like, I only like dance music or that type of dance music. Whereas I remember when I was young, I liked all sorts of stuff. I was brought up on folk music and singer-songwriters, but I love rock and whatever else. I guess
a lot of aspiring artists don't realise how much work goes into things, do they?
No, definitely.
Do you find that with people you work with?
Definitely. I think it's amazing how a lot of people think it is incredibly easy.
Mm. Is that the fault of X Factor and things like that? Do you think?
I think it's partly to blame. Overnight success, it does happen, but does it last long? And I think it's making that, realising that if you want to have a long career in music, then you've got to put the hours in, and you've got to really know what you want to do, and not just think, right, I'm going to be a star, because that's not what it's about at all.